Now, the church, as I say, throughout the centuries has shown us the way. There is a very solid principle in Catholic moral theology, enshrined in Catholic history and Catholic practice throughout the centuries, and that is ecclesia supplet, the church supplies jurisdiction. The concept is this: ordinarily, you would have the authority to function as, let's say, a member of the clergy in the church, a member of the hierarchy of the church, would come through the Supreme Pontiff, would come from the Vicar of Christ on earth, the Pope. There are times, though, when popes die and months, maybe even years pass. Yes, there was a case when almost 3 years passed, when there was no valid pope elected. Chalk that up to the perversity of the cardinals, most of whom were French, unfortunately, at the time, who basically were holding the church hostage because they couldn't agree. But the fact is, the church was without a pope for all that time. But the church doesn't simply evaporate. It's not a brigadoon that appears every 200 years for a day and then disappears again. The church is the church. I mean, the church, bereft of a pope, has the power now to choose another pope and to put him in position. That's what the power the church has. It's invested in the church itself to produce, as it were, another pontiff, a vicar of Christ on earth. So the church itself has that power given to it by Christ. The idea that there can be no jurisdiction in the church, no faculties, no power to exercise authority in the church, especially the power of holy orders, that there can be no power or authority given to exercise the power of holy orders to justify souls or sanctify souls, except that power comes down through the channels from the Supreme Pontiff, through his bishops, especially those who have ordinary jurisdiction, let's say in dioceses, or through major superiors, religious congregations, religious orders, That is not so. The church's history shows that it's not so. The church's tradition says that the church herself can supply, and does, in fact, supply that jurisdiction. The church, in the course of her history, and therefore the course of her tradition, has supplied the necessary power to administer the sacraments, even when there is no delegation or no authorization given by any human being here on earth of any ecclesiastical position at all. The church acknowledges this principle. As I say, laws are written for the sake of standard operating procedure when things are quote-unquote normal. But even there, in the church's own canon law, she has provided for times when there is confusion. She has provided for the times when things are not clear, when there is doubt, when there is a certain lack of knowledge about things. Can the priest proceed? Can he validly administer sacraments, notably giving absolution, confession? The church has acknowledged that, yes, there are circumstances under which this can be, even when there's not a crisis. Canon 209, I believe it is, actually speaks of these occasions during normal operating times. There can be confusion or a certain disorientation or whatever, and the church simply grants of herself this power to sanctify souls. So you take that and you see, well, in the church, in her Code of Canon Law, already acknowledges this and grants this. So what must it be in the times of crisis, when it's as though the people feel they have nowhere else to go? Again, this is in times that are very unsettled and unsettling, times of war, times of breakdown, times of heresy, and so on. And the Catholic people do not know where to go or what to do. They can follow, again, the church's tradition in telling them, by seeing what the church told them to do, told Catholics to do in the past, what the church approved that the missionaries did in the past in such times, what the church condemned in the past, not only in ordinary times, but even in extraordinary times of confusion and crisis. There are still things that are still wrong and that no Catholic could do and justify under any circumstances. Again, this goes back to the things that the church has always and everywhere condemned, saying this is not acceptable for a Catholic ever to do these things.